Woo, check me out. Roll cage tubes are here. This is a pretty exciting day. I was actually pretty impressed. I ordered this tube yesterday and it was dropped off. It was about $540, I believe, delivered, which is pretty nice. I didn't have to go get it. So not actually too bad. We're down here in SoCal. I'm sure that prices may fluctuate based on where you are in the country, but actually not too bad. And it's kind of hard to believe. We're just standing here looking at this. This is a lot of tube and it's gonna burn up almost all this. So these tubes here are 23 feet long and there's 5 of them. Really excited to get going on this and check us out. Tubes, lifesavers. Yeah. So while we were waiting for the tube to show up, I went ahead and started getting the pads cleared off where the main hoop is gonna set. So in my experience, I found the best way to do this is to kind of elevate the roll cage a little bit. Whether that be setting it on a shelf back here or building a box for it right here, that's kind of up to you, but this is what I found to work pretty good. I pushed the main hoop pretty far back, and this is where I like to put it. So what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm gonna make a plate, and this plate is gonna set right here. The factory structure isn't necessarily strong enough just to weld the tube to. In a lot of cases, it's mandatory for your pretty much any style of racing to have a base plate for your roll cage. It's gonna kind of sit in that corner, and then I'm gonna MIG weld this whole plate onto that spot, and then that main hoop's gonna end up landing right there on that little corner right there. Still gotta do the other side, but at least I got a good head start on this side. And then after I clean that one, I'm gonna transfer this to metal, get those plates tacked in, then we'll start measuring for the main hoop, which is the first tube. Taking some stuff out of the car, I spent a little bit of time on the sound deadening trying to get all that stuff out of there. It's kind of a pain, but I just used a MAP gas torch to heat it up, and then I was able to scrape it up with just one of my little scraper dudes. It actually worked pretty well. So I got the plates tacked in for where the main hoop is gonna land. So that's pretty cool. Got them cleaned up on both sides, about ready to be welded out, but I'll go ahead and do that later. So the first tube that we're gonna end up bending right now is the main hoop. That's the piece that goes right behind your head, and that's gonna be your main support structure for your entire cage and kind of the base of the whole thing. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do getting started is just give yourself an overall measurement so you know how long to cut the tube. So you're just gonna start from your base plate where that cage is gonna end up landing. You're gonna try and simulate where the bends are gonna be as best you can, but at the end of the day, we're gonna shoot for a little bit long on this one. So it looks like we are just shy of 10 feet. So it's always good to cut it a little bit long because you can always cut some of the ends off a little bit later. So I'm gonna go ahead and make this one about 10.5 feet. Should put us right where we need to be. Bingo! Oh yeah. So I have these couple of bends here that I know based on experience that these are gonna be pretty close to about what the hoop is gonna be. This main hoop is gonna have 4 bends in it. It's gonna have 2 up at the top right here on the roof, and then it's gonna have 2 right here on the sides, kind of behind your shoulder. So what I do is I take the 60-degree bend and I stick it up there in the car, and it looks pretty good, right? Matches pretty sweet. So now we just gotta figure out our distances between the bends and how do we nail that perfectly. So we've come up with a way that, I call this your Mandrel Mark. So this is your mark that basically, you just pick a point on your die that is in your tubing bender, and this will be basically what you base all your measurements off of. In my case, this is right at the end of where the clamp goes on, you put the pin through, and it's basically just a mark on my bender that I use. So kind of where the bend starts and stops is almost irrelevant with this method. So I'm gonna stick this tube up in here, about 60 degrees, make it so it's touching right on the outside. Looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark the chassis right where that Mandrel mark is, right there. I'm gonna do a mark, I'm gonna flip it over, and I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. All right, got it sitting up in there, about where it's gonna be, so if it comes down, it's gonna land right on our pad, looks good. Now I got 2 marks on my chassis. So now, all you have to do, take the tape measure, measure in between the 2 marks that we put up, and it's exactly 22 inches. So what I'm gonna do when I cut that 10.5 foot tube, I'm gonna pull a tape measure from one end, I'm gonna find the center, I'm gonna go 11 inches one way and 11 inches the other way, which equals 22. And I'm gonna put 2 marks, and then I'm gonna bend it on the same radius, both of them. Okay, so looks like we actually have something that resembles a main hoop for a race car. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna pull a measurement from our mark on the roof down to the floor in the car, and that's gonna tell me pretty much exactly how much I need to cut off the feet because we did leave a little bit extra. So I can do that, and then what I like to do after that is get inside of the car where the main hoop is gonna go and pull a measurement inside and see how wide we are. Then we can verify that we're too wide before we try and jam that main hoop in there. I'm sure these tubes might need a little bit of tweaking, I have a feeling these are gonna need to get bent a little bit more, and when that happens, it's gonna swing that whole leg in, so we might have to take a little bit of bend out of these, and I'll show you how I do that. I got a brand new 2JZ block that I'm gonna drop off at the machine shop, and that's gonna be my new race motor for next year, and then the one that's in the car now, I'm gonna yank it out and use that as my spare. So a couple of moving parts, but just a little bit of running around today. And then we gotta go buy O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Oh, that's everything on us.
Let me check the straightness on the old crane. He's gonna do it real quick. It doesn't take that long apparently.
Right.
That's a good one?
Yeah, sometimes it seems like 18,000.
We're here at Engine Supply with my friend Mason. He was the one who was in charge of helping us with the bottom end on our 2J for the comp car last year. So we got a brand new Titan block here. This is a factory 2JZ block. It's absolutely brand new, never been run before. So Mason, walk us through real quick, like a quick version of what we're gonna do to this thing to get it ready for FD comp.
Well, we're gonna take the factory caps off and bore these billet rad caps on there. Start with that.
And so when we do that, we're basically just gonna like line bore, make sure it's dead straight, right? For the
Line
crank?
bore it, and then we'll finish it with the line hone to make sure everything's perfectly straight.
Okay, cool.
And then we'll put a fresh deck on it, and depending on what size pistons you got, we'll do a bore and hone with the torque plate. And then that's about it.
That's about it.
Maybe take out the steel freeze plugs and put some brass ones in.
Yeah, okay, sweet. All the little tricks over here at Engine Supply, but my engine ran absolutely perfect all year last year, so it was a no-brainer to bring it back to these guys, and hopefully we get this thing all done up, and we'll be making horsepower in no time. So thank you again, Mason.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I appreciate it, man. We're gonna get new drain pan because everybody always needs a new drain pan, and then we're gonna get some microfibers because rigs always be getting dirty in the shop. 12 pack blues, perfect.
And an oil filter.
And an oil filter. That's right. That's right. I knew I was forgetting something. 1995 BMW 325 IS. That it's always best to try to clean the tube off as best you can before you start bending it. One, because once you start marking on it with your Sharpies, it will ruin your pen, and then your marks kind of aren't that visible, especially with a dark colored tube. So that's just all the stuff that came off of it. They put oil on it so it doesn't rust most of the time, and that's just really hard on your pens, and it's just really nasty and dirty, gets your hands pretty gross. So clean that stuff off first things first. So now that we got the basic length of our main hoop cut, I'm gonna pull halfway down the tube and I'm gonna find the exact center of it, and that's gonna be the start of all of our measurements. 10.5 foot total, so 5'3" on each side. Double check that it was the same in case I messed up the cut, which I didn't. So what I do is I kind of give that center line just a mark, and you don't have to get it confused with any of your other marks that may go on this tube. So with those bend marks that we put inside of the chassis, we found that the distance between my marks for the start of the bends is 22 inches apart. So I'm just gonna pull 11 inches on each side of this 0 mark. 22 inches on the dot. I'm gonna make these marks a little bit brighter so they're a little bit easier to see. We have both of the top 2 bends all laid out on this tube, so it's about time to throw this thing in the bender and give it a bend. So this is what I was talking about with that Mandrel Mark. This is that mark that I put on the roof of the car. So notice how the start of the bend isn't gonna start until way back here, but the cool part about doing it like this is that you really have a really accurate representation of where your bend is gonna be. There's no guessing. Really, I usually just look down at the tube this way, and I kind of just line that mark up right with the edge of that. And that's where really I base all my marks off of. So when I say that the beginning of the bend is almost irrelevant, it's because it is. It's just really holding that tube up in there, and you can just use those pre-bent tubes that you have to kind of map out where everything's gonna lay. So I'm feeling pretty confident in this. That bend that I had in my hand was 60 degrees. I think it's gonna be right about there. This bender, usually I'll have to go 4 degrees past the number that I'm looking for because the tube will relax and flex back. So I'm aiming for 64 degrees right now. And then we will pull it out, and then I'll show you how to do the second 2 bends, the lower ones in the car. First bend is done. I got the tube flipped around. So that was our first mark. Here's our center. We have our line here to show us that the bend is gonna go on that side of the line. I got my Mandrel Mark all lined up. We have to make sure that both of these bends are perfectly parallel, because if the tube is hanging down, our bends are gonna be way off. And you can kind of just stand here and look down the tube and eyeball it so it's dead flat with the die. It's pretty dang close. So back in the car, we have our pre-bent tubes again. So I'm gonna stick that 60-degree up in there. That's the one that we just bent. So looking at it now, I'm gonna try and hold this 30-degree one up here and just kind of see how it looks. And think about, if this tube moves up and down, pretending like this is telescoping in and out of this one, you can basically widen or skinny up the cage if you want to. So depending on how far this mark is from this mark right here, is gonna determine your width and your second bend. See how the bottom of that tube is shooting right towards that plate? That's actually looking pretty good. So what I'll do now that I know that these two ends of the tube are basically gonna touch, I'll just set these on the ground. I'm just gonna line that edge up so it's nice and flat, just like I had it in the car. So you're gonna grab your tape measure, and I'm pretty much just gonna kind of eyeball this a little bit, which seems a little weird, but it seems to work for me. So I'm gonna kind of hold this thing right on top here, and I'm gonna look at this very, very outside mark on that tube. I'm gonna pretend that the main hoop is laying right down next to this thing, and I'm just trying to get this mark, right? So I'm gonna hold that tape right there, so when I look straight down on it, the corner of that tape is at the very, very top of that mark. And it looks like, and then I'm gonna measure from the outside of this bottom tube, 15 5/8. Lay this on the ground just like we had. And since I only did my marks on the inside of this tube, it's gonna be smart to go ahead and make that mark connect all the way around. Now, same thing like what we did to those tubes over there. I'm just gonna take this mark, looking right down on here from the outside of the tube, go ahead and measure to my 15 5/8. And that mark right there is gonna be the start of our second bend. Same thing on the other side. We've been jamming on that E36, putting in some hours on that thing this weekend, and it's Monday. It's been super windy the past couple days, so I figured we'd come down, check out the water down here in Newport Beach. There's about 8,000 places to eat around here, so we're gonna try out this new bowl place. Surf check, get some food, get out of the shop for a little bit, and I'm still dirty, but oh well. It's a wellness shot. It's lemon, ginger, and cayenne pepper. It's gonna burn so good. Okay, success. We got some food. We got a cayenne wellness shot. Tore us right up. We actually didn't film it, but it was really, really gnarly. But kind of gnarly in a good way. I sort of like it. I don't know. It does something that's good for your stomach, maybe.
Dylan, how's the beach today?
Perfect! The surf is great! So after a little bit of messing around, I got the main hoop looking pretty dang good. It's nice and square, it's nice and even, it fits pretty freaking sweet. I ended up pushing those two top bends out just a little bit, and I like to do that because then you have a better angle for the main hoop to run into the main hoop. And it just kind of makes it so you don't have to add an extra bend in this tube, in the A-pillar tube, to get it to land properly on the main hoop. So pretty much touching the roof on both sides. Got a little bit of room over here for some door bars. It's gonna be nice and easy to get a straight line for the rear stays that go back to the shock towers. I'm super happy with how that's looking, so I figure we should move on to the A-pillars, AKA the hardest part of a cage.